And disclaimers. Please check with your monitoring authority regarding their requirements. And CTC has purview over granting, denying all applications submitted for review. So I'm going to let our three panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with the questions. Candy, you want to go ahead and start?
I'm Candy Hayes. I'm the supervisor of credential services for Contra Costa.
My name is Nisa Ortiz, and I am the credentials manager of Ventura County Office of Education.
I'm Stephanie Tomasi, the credentials manager at the Alameda County Office of Education.
Okay, thank you so much, ladies. So let's get started with the first question. If the applicant provides an official transcript that was sent to them and we receive it in person from the applicant and we stamp it stating that it was certified copy of the original, will that be acceptable?
So that would be okay, as long as they're handing you a paper transcript that's official. You can see that it's not a photocopy. It came in an envelope. It does not have to be sealed. As long as it's an original transcript, you don't have to actually verify. I mean, if the state sees your date stamp has your agency name on it, that's fine. They'll accept it, a photocopy in the application packet, because they know that you've done your due diligence to make sure you see the original transcript. Now, if it's an electronic transcript, that's different. You have to be the receiver, not the applicant, for any electronic transcripts.
Next question is, the current CL 857 on the CTC still says provide photocopies. Are they going to change that verbiage? Where can we find confirmation that we don't need copies?
So yes, hopefully they will update the forms, but at this point it's not. But there is a CIA, it's 2204, that states that the recruitment information is no longer required.
Next question, you can get an early childhood special ed with a PIP if they qualify for another of the service areas. So mild, moderate, mild, severe, or again, the new ones. Looking at the PIP worksheet, you can then check the box for early childhood as long as they qualify for one of the other ed specialist service areas. So I guess someone's giving their perspective on that. So that's not a question. So
I can just add, if I could just add something to that, Amy, it's
Yes.
true. They can give the early childhood authorization as long as they are asking for something different, like the mild to moderate support needs or extensive support needs. And one thing to say, when you talk about as long as you qualify for any of the other areas, just remember that the qualifications are the same regardless of the different SPED authorizations, like mild to moderate support needs or extensive support needs. So if they qualify for any of those, you definitely can also get the early childhood. It's no longer the ECSE as the because it's the new authorization, is the ER, but it's still early childhood.
thank you, Nisa.
Next question is, what's the next step if the PIP expires and a teacher has not been accepted into an intern program?
That would be your STIP, but you have to ensure that they've never held one before. So when you check their CTC record, if they don't have a STIP, you just apply for the STIP. You don't have to evaluate again. If you're requesting the same subject, you just include the application CL 859 and fee.
Okay, next one. If they hold a STIP, what's the next credential they should apply for?
And well, in theory, the next one should be an intern document. But if they've never, you can go from a STIP to a PIP as long as you don't have subject matter. So if this is an individual that was truly covering someone on a short-term leave, and they still don't have subject matter, they can go to a PIP. However, really, they should be moving towards an intern document.
Next question is, a district comes to me and says an applicant wants to teach special education. They have a BA? Where do I start? Do I go to a waiver first and then a PIP?
Well, okay, so Stephanie mentioned this morning that you have to be a detective when it comes to these things. So the first thing I always do is I check their CTC information to see if they've had any kind of documents before. And you always want to do a secure search with the social security number and date of birth. If they've had PIPs, STIPs before, then your options are limited. But say you see that they've never had anything before, you want to see, is the BA, is a major in liberal studies? If so, then you know that the PIP is definitely out of the question, and you're only on the PIP is out of the question and the waiver is out of the question, and your only option then at that point would be a STIP if they're not intern eligible yet. One more thing to keep track of is, does the person meet basic skills? Because both the PIP and the STIP require the basic skills. And if say, for example, the person has a degree, a bachelor's with a major in liberal studies, but they don't meet basic skills, then you can request a waiver, but you have to waive the program and you have to waive the basic skills. So that's very important for you to check. Now, you also want to make sure that you are checking their transcripts for units, because say they meet the basic skills, but they don't have the qualifications for the PIP or the STIP, whether it be the 40 units across the 4 different areas or the 18 units in one of the single subject areas, then that's going to eliminate the STIP or the PIP route, but you still can potentially qualify for the waiver. So there are various things that you kind of have to figure out. I always ask them, are you in a credentialing program? And if so, have you passed your CSATs? Somebody asked earlier, how would you know if somebody passes the CSATs? You don't know. This is a conversation that you have to have with the educator. And so it's important that you're asking all the right questions, because if you apply for something and they don't qualify, say you apply for a waiver and they pass the CSATs, that's the CTC is not going to refund that processing fee. And so it's important that you're asking all those questions.
Thank you. Would a BA in literature be considered as meeting the English subject matter competence by the CTC?
Currently, no. I mean, a degree in literature would give them enough units for an English PIP, but it's until legislation changes, they have to be an exact match to be considered subject matter equivalency. So this person would have to take the English CSATs eventually, but a literature degree would give them probably enough units to qualify for a PIP.
Next question is, can you go from intern credential down to a STIP if you haven't had a STIP previously?
Yes. And the caveat I would say is make sure that intern document is no longer valid. It could be a situation where the program has said, hey, we're going to inactivate their intern document. Just make sure that STIP is dated after the expiration of that intern document.
Okay, your slide states liberal arts, not liberal studies, and you just stated that liberal arts is not yet approved to meet BA major subject matter.
Correct. Liberal arts is not yet approved. It's very likely that it will soon be approved, but for right now, the only major that meets subject matter for multiple subject is liberal studies.
Next question is, for a STIP, if they have passed the CSATs, do we still need to complete the worksheet?
No, we like those. And also, if they have a degree in a statutory subject, you do not need to do the worksheet.
All right, can a teacher get a PIP 1 year for multiple subject and then the next school year get a PIP for single subject English if she has the units to qualify for both?
No.
Next question is, I believe you said you no longer have to submit PIP recruiting backup. Can you please confirm?
That is correct. And we are aware, you do not have to submit recruiting effort documentation. We are aware that the form, the 857, still does say that you have to. Now, the PIP leaflet, which is the 856, actually clarifies that copies must be retained by the employing agency. So you should still have that, but they are not required to be submitted with the actual packet.
Okay, if we plan to have staff on a STIP for the following school year, when should the CL 859 be sent in to the CTC?
That is part of your application packet. So it should not go by itself. When you are doing your 41-4 and you're submitting all of your documents, it's a sandwich. It's in your application sandwich. You have the 41.4, you have the CL 859 next, you have your supporting documents with the check on top. So it's never something that goes by itself. It's always with your application.
Thank you. Next question is, if an applicant holds a degree in liberal studies, would they be eligible to apply for a PIP for education specialist?
No, they can go with the short-term staff permit because they've met subject matter. Or I would encourage them to talk to a college university program to see how quickly they can become an intern.
Okay. STIP qualifications for ed specialist. Is there a requirement of hours when applied to verify a minimum of 3 years of classroom experience working with special education students? Experience as an aide is acceptable? Question mark.
So I'll start with the second part. Experience as an aide is acceptable. And as far as the number of hours, there is no magic number. There is no requirement hours. But remember that when you are getting that letter of the verification of experience, the district will either say the person was in a full-time, whatever it be, teaching position or aide position, or part-time. And so if it's less than a full-time position, you just want to make sure that there's enough part-time years to qualify for the PIP or the STIP.
Next question is, if an applicant holds a degree in social science, political science, or English, would they be eligible to apply for a PIP ed specialist?
Well, the only one would be if it's a political science, because that's not an exact match to any of the statutory subjects. So a political science degree, yes, they can get a PIP, but social science and English are statutory subjects, so that would be a no.
Okay, let's see. Is there a way to have a limited permit for summer school only?
I mean, it's almost a waste of the limited assignment because it's only a 1-year document anyways, and you do have to give them a support provider. So I don't know if summer would be the best time for someone to use one. I mean, you can apply for one at any time. They're valid for 1 year. So if summer school is falling within that 1-year period, yes. But again, the district is saying that they're going to provide them a support provider during the time that they're on that GLAP or CLAP.
All right, next question is, we are conflating a STIP for an incoming RSP teacher with a BA. Which transcript evaluation worksheet would we use?
You use the CL 864. That is the worksheet for every special education authorization for STIPs.
Next question is, I have a teacher who we tried to get a PIP on for an ed specialist for this school year. However, they were struggling to pass the math requirement of the CBEST. Unfortunately, their coursework did not meet the grade requirement. They only have a 30-day sub permit now, and I know they are considered misassigned. If they take a math course this summer and pass with a B or better to get the 3 semester units required to meet coursework, can I reapply for the PIP that was originally denied by CTC?
Now that's a little confusing, but I'm going to assume that you say they have a sub permit, that's based on 1397. So they have a sub permit that did not require basic skills. I'm going to assume that's what you mean. Do the rest of you agree that's what they mean? Because how else could they have a sub permit unless it was under 1397? So that being the case, since the basic skills is required for a PIP and STIP, yes, they can certainly reapply with a new application and fees and everything else, but make sure you include the 41-BSR form and your copies of the parts of the CBEST that they did pass, so the CTC knows how you're mixing. If they take a course, yes, of course, any math course that's non-remedial with a B or better, they can mix that with other portions of CBEST that they have passed. So does that sound like what they were asking, guys?
Yes.
That's what, and one more thing, Stephanie, if I may just add, so you talk about, there's a misassignment there, and monitoring authorities are required to ensure that misassignments are fixed within 30 days. So you may not want to wait until the summer. You may want to apply for a waiver. We talked about how a person that meets the qualifications but doesn't need basic skills yet can still qualify for a waiver. You can't just leave a person there and say, it's a misassignment. That doesn't work.
Right, if you're reporting them as the teacher of record, it is definitely going to be, it's going to be a problem.
All right, next question's a little confusing, but I think I got it. It says, would someone having a 30-day sub permit waiver or lower the CTC fee for an emergency permit? Or is it just the clear credentials that waive or lower the fee for emergency permits?
So I'm not, so I'm gonna go with this two avenues here. So if we're talking about the waiver, when the waiver, the $100 waiver fee is waived, it's only for people who hold a credential. The only other thing would be like if you have a certificate of clearance, that initial certificate of clearance counts towards $50 towards your first preliminary. So like for people coming in from out of state, they have, if you're getting them an emergency clatter coming in, when they get that preliminary, they're paying $50 because they have to get their certificate of clearance, and then that counts towards kind of that $50. If someone has a preliminary and they're getting like a waiver clot or something, then that fee is usually waived. So I'm thinking that that's what that question was pertaining to.
Okay, next question. How can someone be eligible to apply for a BCLAD waiver? What is required if applicant doesn't have a language proficiency yet?
This one is a little throwing me off, but the first thing that I have to say is if you're asking for a BCLAD waiver, you have to have a base credential, so multiple subject, single subject, something like that. Now, these people, you're asking for a waiver because they have not yet proven language proficiency. So that is the reason for the waiver, because if they need to, language proficiency, then you would be asking for an emergency BCLAD, which is not a waiver. So it's, when somebody has say a multiple subject and they're going to be teaching in a, say, dual immersion program, then you just follow the steps to apply for the waiver, the VW1 form. And there really isn't anything else that is required.
I will just throw in there that it could be needed because all they have is an internship or a STIP or a PIP. We've done a few BCLAD waivers for people because they all only have an internship. They might have met the foreign language proficiency, but because they still have an internship or PIP or STIP, they're requesting a waiver for that reason. So that's the other part of why they can't get an emergency BCLAD permit, because they don't have a preliminary or a clear.
All right, next question is, are we able to submit waiver applications online?
That's a no.
Okay. If an applicant holds a degree in political science, would they be eligible to apply for a PIP social science?
Yes. Political science isn't one of the statutory subject areas. So they do not have subject matter for social science.
Next question is, can you send the 41 NC with an application?
Yes, in fact, it's necessary if the name on the 41-4 does not match the CTC's records. What you can also do, and what people sometimes do, is they send that 41-4 with the name as it matches on the CTC's records. They'll wait for the document to be approved and then process the name change. But if you're not doing that, and you just the applicant wants to make sure that their new name is on the 41-4, then you must include the 41 NC with supporting documents.
I will
Okay.
just add, when Tammy Dugan was here, she helped us a lot with that. She said, if you're going to do that, make sure you put the 41 NC on top of the application, like this is the application. Put your 41 NC and staple it with the documents right to the top. I don't know if you can see what I'm showing you, but staple it to the front. So CTC has to take it apart, put it in a pile so that it can get processed, because we know applications are going to take 50 days. But if that 41 NC is on top, they can get that done. And then by the time they do the application, it'll all work.
Okay, if they got a name change, but their transcripts are under the previous name, can we verify and still approve courses?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's very common. Women have, you know, your maiden names for your transcripts, but then they've since gotten credentials and other names. That's totally fine. The CTC won't give you any problems with that.
All right, next question is regarding name changes. We recommend candidates submit their 41-4 as shown on their CTC profile. Then after the app is granted, then go back and submit the 41NC. We have been informed that submitting the 41NC first may delay the CTC app process.
I mean, I don't think it delays I mean, because again, the application, like Stephanie said, still takes the statutory amount of time. But again, if the 41NC is put on top, they're going to go ahead and process that. And that way the name change is done by the time they get to the application.
Okay, I have an internship credential holder who needs a BCLAD Spanish authorization. What type of document can I file if the candidate has already passed the CSET World Language Spanish 3?
You can get the BCLA waiver. Now, one thing to be mindful of is with an internship credential, remember that the university is the one that recommended that educator for that document. You want to make sure that the university is aware that educator is serving in a bilingual assignment. They're not always okay with it. Sometimes they want the educator to be exactly in an assignment that matches their credentials. And you just want to make sure that with the intern credentials, you keep the universities informed of what that assignment is.
Next question is, if a teacher is currently on a STIP but is still not intern eligible, can they move to a PIP or a BTW?
I would say PIP only if they have not met subject matter competency. Okay, if they've met subject matter competency, there's no more drop down waivers. So there's no magic pill there, unfortunately. I mean, we've been telling people to just, you know, make sure they have a valid sub permit. They can be a day-to-day sub until they can do what they need to do to get into that internship program.
On the GLAP, I have some teachers who applied for this permit. They want to renew it next year and they want me to tell them which classes to complete for the multiple subject credential. Is that the credential specialist's responsibility or is it the applicant's responsibility to find out the required courses?
What I would say is I feel it's our responsibility to tell them what types of classes to take. Like and again, depending on why they're on the GLAP, if they're trying to get a supplementary authorization, there's statutory courses they need to take and they need to be aware of that. They need to know, like, if they need the new numbers course for the math. And so we need to supply that information to them as far as what specific courses they can work with College University. But I mean, and we need to let them know they have to be BA applicable. Like, those are the things, because a lot of these people might be going to a junior college. So there's a lot of, especially the numbers course, because they think like, oh, here's a numbers course. A lot of those are not BA applicable. So, I mean, I think that's our due diligence, is to make sure they're aware of the standards and then take the correct courses.
I would add though this, if they have a single subject's credential and then they get a multiple subjects GLAP, there's no supplementary authorization for multiple subjects. So everyone can assume they're going to add the authorization for multiple subjects. So you and your applicant need to look at the added authorization leaflet, CL 621A, I believe it is. You and your applicant should review that leaflet, and it says, I am the holder of a preliminary single subjects or clear single subjects, and I want a multiple subjects. And then it tells them exactly what they need to do, which is CSET. You have methods of teaching elementary ed, RECA. There's other things that are listed there. So that's the guide. I mean, don't feel like, you know, you don't feel confident to advise them, but you're giving them the CTC guidelines. Okay, so it's really, you're telling them what CTC is saying they need to do. And then if you actually read their GLAP, it says to renew it, you must, you know, take all of the CSETs and pass 2 portions or take 6 units of coursework. So that's very clear. So that's their guide. Basically, it's saying, okay, take all your multiple subject CSETs and pass at least 2, and then you can renew. Or be taking the methods. If you take a 3 units methods class, you can take that And then one of the exams, an exam is considered like 3 semester units of coursework. So passing an exam and taking a 3 semester units of methods, that meets your renewal requirements. So there's a little ways to play with that, but you always have to know the direction that that person's going with their GLAP and track them. I mean, they're your teacher. You don't want to lose them. This is a teacher shortage. And if they've been doing a great job in their classroom, but they need to be reminded of things throughout the year, you might want to put it on your calendar to remind them and check in with them. You know, your GLAP's coming up for renewal. How are you doing with your CSETs or with your methods course? Did you find a methods course? I mean, as an analyst, you might even have to help them find a methods course. I mean, we have that that booklet CTC put out. What's it called, guys? Help me out. On the methods.
Yeah, it just hasn't been updated recently.
It hasn't been updated, but a lot of those classes are still available. So
Yeah.
there are resources to help them find what they need in order to move on, because you don't want to lose them. I mean, we want to do what we can to keep our teachers.
And one more thing to add, Stephanie, we go back to asking those questions. What is the final outcome? Some people may be wanting to get a supplementary authorization because they're close to it, you know, with the 20 units. Some people may be wanting to get that single subject as a full single subject credential. So before you advise them, you wanna find out what is their final goal. So they
Right,
don't
exactly. You want to know the path they're taking. When you get that first GLAP, you know, you've already evaluated their transcripts. If they have a lot of units and they just need a few more to get the supplementary authorization, then you'll have worked out that worksheet with them. So you know, okay, you have this many units, and what Candy was saying, there's a worksheet and they're specifically saying what courses they need. But when they're going from single to multiple, because there's not a SUP authorization in multiple subjects, the only thing they can be doing is working towards adding the multiple subjects authorization. But supplementary authorization, that's a very good pathway they could be on, but you do need to know that initially.
Next question is, what do we need to do in order for a clear or preliminary credential holder to get a waiver for a BCLAD Vietnamese? Spanish? How long is the waiver good for?
Waivers are good for the school year. So by the end of that school year, those waivers expire. When somebody has a preliminary credential or clear credential, and they have not met language proficiency, then they qualify for the waiver. You just have to, again, submit the paperwork. There's no additional requirements for any of the languages. Now, once they meet language proficiency, then they no longer qualify for the waiver, and instead you could apply for an emergency bilingual authorization while they either complete the bilingual program or they pass the rest of the CSETs.
Okay, can you please review a subsequent waiver requirement?
Is that me? You really have to know, and sometimes you don't know what was waived on the waiver, right? You read the waiver, you go to the CTC website, it doesn't tell you. And if they're coming from another county or another district, there's no way you're going to know what was waived. I mean, maybe it's basic skills, and then they would have to show you that they're working towards it and passed a section. I always advise email the waiver unit, you know, go on and make sure how many waivers they have, see how many they've had, because they can only get up to three years on a waiver. So you have to do that detective work again to know, and then make that extra step. Email the waiver unit, say, I'm considering doing a subsequent on this person. Is it possible? And they will tell you. I mean, I had one where they said no, even though they got the whatever it was. I think it was a STIP under the no BSR, and it didn't say it on the STIP, and nobody knew. And they said, actually, they've not met basic skills, so no. So it would have been a subsequent waiver, but it would have gotten rejected. So do yourself a favor, just email the waiver unit, make sure they haven't had 3 already, and then take the advice of the waiver unit.
Next question is, if GLAP requirements are not met, is there an option to apply for a renewal?
No, I mean, you have to, I mean, they have the renewal requirements there.
Okay, what happens after a third waiver and they have not met the requirements?
We have to pull them from the assignment. They're no longer authorized to be in the assignment. And one thing that I find super helpful is the waivers. Once they're approved, the CTC actually mails a waiver document, and it tells you, sometimes they tell you this is the last waiver, and there will be no additional ones considered. So as Stephanie said, though, it's always worth emailing the commission when situations arise that are unusual, and follow their advice, because if they tell you it's not going to happen, it's just not going to happen. And you don't want to put somebody in a position for a school year and then have to pull them out mid-year. So yeah, there's really not much leeway after a third waiver.
Next question is, for the special education bridge authorizations, can an online application be used, or do we need to do a paper application?
It's not approved yet for online submission. I have a feeling it will be because it's one of the more simple ones to file, but until CTC puts it out, no, it's not. It's a paper app.
Can a local assignment option be used for general education STEM course, grades 6 through 8?
Yes, if they qualify. So depending on what local assignment option you're looking for, as long as they meet the unit requirement, yes.
Someone wrote the dates for courses GLAP and CLAP are supposed to be taken during the permit or school year. The dates, I'm not sure.
I think this question refers to the classes that you're taking to renew those emergency permits. And if that's the case, then the classes need to be taken after the emergency permit was granted. So not before. Anything that you've taken before is not going to count towards meeting the renewal requirements.
Okay, any courses have to have dates no earlier than the GLAP CLAP date. How does one know when the actual course starts? Example, if date is August 1st and the fall semester should be okay?
I would say probably. If they're saying the CLAP was issued as of August 1st, I mean, not CLAP, GLAP, and then they took courses in the fall. I don't know, when do fall courses start? I don't know. I would say
Usually
probably.
like mid to late August.
Yeah, I would say probably then those would be okay. They didn't have them before, but then they took them, that they're making progress.
Next question is, so it's been told to me that the university should be telling the students or educators what they should be taking and when. But you're telling us we should be guiding the educators. Doesn't that open up the district to liabilities if something isn't communicated correctly?
And I mean, when we're saying guiding them, it's more of a guiding them to like go to the college university. Like we're guiding them on the first steps as far as to make sure that they're on track. So it's not necessarily saying like, okay, you're in a multiple subject program, you should be taking these courses. It's you should be in a multiple subject program. Like that's kind of where we're guiding them and following up. Like again, when we hire teachers in August, September, I always follow up in December because they're so overwhelmed at that time. And it's just a check-in like, hey, like, have you registered for your CSET? Have you enrolled in a program? Have you completed your like EL courses to become an intern? Like that's kind of how we should be guiding them. Yeah, once they're in that credential program, we should feel pretty confident, but it's still checking in with them. Like, okay, so you're in your second year of intern, is everything going good? It's more of just a check-in versus really telling them specifically what courses to take.
And also, Candy, one more thing to consider is a lot of the guidance that we're providing are, it's guidance towards like fully credentialed people that maybe want to obtain something else and not going to university. So say, for example, you have someone holding a clear single subject credential, and they just want to obtain another subject or maybe a multiple subject. I'm like, they're not really going to university. I mean, they take one course, but really the guidance they're getting is likely from you, the credentials analyst.
Okay, we are completing a step for an incoming RSP teacher, which is the transcript leaflet number for the evaluation of transcripts. Would we use the multiple subject transcript evaluation? Need help on locating the leaflet?
So again, the leaflet is the CL 864 and it is located on the SIG.
And just want to throw in, RSP is included on all special ed credentials. So that is why you were filling out the special ed worksheet and you are indicating one of the special ed areas that you want to be. You're not requesting an RSP credential because no, it's not a standalone. It's built in to all of the special ed credentials. So you use the special ed worksheet.
For medical extension, how long can one ask for an appeal?
1 year. CTC only gives 1 year at a time for appeals.
Okay, would an appeal application be appropriate when an applicant from out of the country who holds a preliminary does not complete CBES within the first year?
I would say they would more appropriate would be to drop down to like a waiver. You can basically waive it as soon as they meet their subject matter or meet basic skills, that preliminary will be active again. And again, as a caution, the preliminary will stay valid. So this is why I always tell people when you hire someone with a 5-year preliminary, or ask for basic skills. And because it says basically it'll look valid on the commission website, but if they don't have basic skills, it's not valid. So they would drop down to a waiver until they meet their basic skills requirement.
Next question is, can an extension be applied for a GLAP or CLAP?
Yes, an extension by appeal can be applied for anytime that the renewal requirements on a document were not met.
Okay, RJ 20, does this apply to preliminary candidates who have not passed RECA TPA?
I would say so. I mean, I don't know, guys. These are new because the commission with COVID flexibility started issuing credentials with the conditions they meet RECA and TPA. I would say it would be an appeal if they didn't do it, and information from the program that they're making progress. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think there will be more information to follow because all those RECA people, COVID are going to be coming up. So.
But they're not yet. It wasn't until 2020, right? So we still have a couple of years. So if you have people out there with RECA and TPA requirements, you want to be pushing. You want to be pushing a little.
Next question is, how many times can someone appeal for an extension? Say they do not clear induction after a 3-year extension.
So if this is specific to that induction extension, there's the 3-year and the 2-year. If they haven't used the 2-year, they can do the 2-year. So if they get the 3-year, they never find a job, then they do find a job, and they could then apply for the 2-year.
Hey, what if a principal has a current multiple subject, but has preliminary admin that is expiring and didn't get into an induction class? Can they get an extension?
The first thing that I would look at is how long was that originally preliminary credential, admin credential granted for? Because those credentials can be granted for up to 5 years, but say the person got into a administrator position and the base credential, multiple subject, single subject, whatever it was expiring the next year or the following year, then the commission would have only granted that admin credential until the base credential expired. And so you want to, and if that's the case, then that is only an application and asking the commission to give the person the rest of the following years for the preliminary. Now, if the person has had the administrative credential for 5 years, then you're talking about an extension by appeal, and you have to submit, not only does the person have to be in an administration position already, but you have to submit proof of enrollment in a CLEAR program.
Next question is, what is the difference between a variable term waiver and an extension?
Well, the variable term waiver is when they don't qualify for a PIP or STIP. So they're short by maybe units. They have 12, but not 18, or they don't have basic skills, and so they got the waiver. Extension would be for someone who has a credential that need to be renewed and didn't preliminary or a GLAP, CLAP. So yeah, an extension is like an appeal, and a waiver is completely different. You use a WV1 form. For an extension, you would use the 41-4 application.
Would someone briefly go over the DON? So that's the Declaration of Need. It was never explained to me. How would I know what GLAPs we may need at the time of submission? What if I ended up needing one that I didn't list?
So the DON is the CL500. It's with all the leaflets. This is kind of what it's hard to see. Yeah, this is what it looks like. I just actually got mine done. If you're a county office, usually send the reminder out to the district. I always make sure we have a copy on file so we know if we should be submitting emergency documents after July 1. It's self-explanatory. So when you're going through the declaration of need, it's pretty much just answering the questions and you're guessing. Like that's the thing is look at what you did this year. Look at your retirements, look at your resignations, know that chances are you may not be hiring qualified people for the people who just retired and resigned. And kind of, it's a guesstimating. If you do not guess high enough, like if you think like, oh, I'm only gonna need 2 limited assignments, and you end up needing 10, you'll have to do an amendment. So when you're looking at the declaration of need, there's a date for the original, and then there's a date, a revision date. So if you're doing a revised one, you just put that date under it. And like I said, it's pretty self-explanatory. And depending on if you're a county office or district, it's different whether you're gonna do a public posting versus a board agenda item.
Next question is, what forms do we need to complete for our educators to receive a waiver for a BCLAD? The educator holds either a clear or preliminary multiple and subject credentials.
I guess, is that me?
Where are you at, Stephanie?
I think you missed
41.
one.
No.
Oh, if the BA in literature allows someone to meet the English, we already answered that one.
So the BCLAD for someone who holds a full credential is not that difficult. I mean, you do need board approval stating the person's being hired on a BCLAD, and the WV1 tells you exactly what the board agenda needs to say. You do have to have recruitment of all 3 methods because it's a non-shortage area. So all non-shortage areas have to include recruitment, meaning your job announcement. And so the job announcement has to show that you recruited for a bilingual teacher. Your online ad has to show that you recruited for a bilingual teacher. Okay, can't just be a flyer that said, oh, we need teachers. It needs specifically say what it is that you recruited for. And then you have to show that you contacted the IHEs. So a copy of an email that went out to your IHEs saying that we're recruiting for bilingual teachers. So those are the 3 main things that need to be included in this waiver are the documentation of all 3 recruitment methods, your board agenda, WV1 form, and because they have a full credential, there is no fee. So these are more simple to apply. I mean, the WV1 form, you'll have to indicate on there when they plan to take that exam to meet subject matter competency so they can get the emergency BCLAD permit, because that is the goal, right? They didn't have the foreign language competency, so the BCLAD waiver is being requested.
Okay, the next one's talking about the DON again, which we already went over. So the next one is for the explanation letter, does it have to be more than a paragraph? Is there a requirement? And is it okay for us, the employer, to write it for them?
I would say no. It's okay for, I mean, you definitely have to review it to make sure that they didn't put anything in there, like I said, anything financial or that it's going to get rejected. As far as how long does it have to be, it doesn't have to be tremendously long, as long as it explains, and as long as the supporting documentation matches what the letters say. I mean, and that's kind of your role is to just look at the letter, look at the supporting documentation, see if it is concise and that it matches. But as far as writing it, they need to write it.
Next one is, if I have someone who has a special education credential and wants to teach under a multiple subject, can that be under a limited assignment, or what are my options for them?
No, so you cannot ask for a GLAC for somebody that has a special education credential. Instead, because those are 2 different areas, special education and general education. So instead, you have to apply for a STIP likely. Now, if they have special education and met subject matter in, say, English or math, and that's how they met subject matter for their special education credential, and now they want to teach multiple subject. If they haven't already met subject matter for multiple subject, then you can apply for a PIP but it's very likely that they may have, and your only option is going to be a STIP.
I'm going to be going through these next ones quite fast, and then we have some that have typed in new. So just so you guys know. So what is the difference between CSET and subject matter?
Well, CSET is the examination one can take to be subject matter compliant, right? And then when we say subject matter, we can be talking about, did they meet, they qualify for a STIP or PIP subject matter because they took CSET or because they have the qualifying units and you've done a worksheet. So it's terminology that's being used. A CSET is an exam. Subject matter can refer to how they met the requirements for that permit.
Next, I'm going to go down a little bit because we already answered a couple of those. The next one would be, what options does someone have if they have a STIP and cannot pass the RECA before the expiration date?
I guess it depends, like if they're on a STIP, like, again, if this is a situation where they had a preliminary, it was kind of one of those that kind of came through COVID, they got a preliminary, didn't pass RECA, so now they're on a STIP, like, then they're out of options. So it really depends on kind of where they are in their option realm. In most cases, people don't get a preliminary without RECA. We just have a handful of those people. Some of them kind of went into the induction kind of realm, but they should still kind of be in that realm at this point. So really, or it could be like they were an intern, they didn't pass the RECA, so they couldn't get their prelim, and we put them on the STIP. So in that case, they are out of options until they get that RECA passed.
Okay, can someone bypass CSET for subject matter competency?
Yeah, I think we've talked about enough about that. Yes, you can meet subject matter competency via the degree major on your BA or MA.
Next question is, a teacher with a single subject teaching credential in biology, can they teach middle school science?
Yes, all full science credentials can teach introductory science. So you want to refer to the science authorization chart in SIG. They have a really good chart there. Just navigate to the assignments tabs in the SIG, pull up the science chart, and you will see that all full science, unless it's specialized, it has the SP in front of it, then they can only do biology. But if it's a full biology credential or chemistry, geo, or physics, they can teach introductory science.
Here,
liberal arts and liberal studies the same thing?
No, liberal studies, again, is specific to, it's kind of that generalized courses that you've taken, specific amount of units in multiple areas. Liberal arts, a lot of times is focused on more of kind of the art area. And I think this is where the commission has to really look at the liberal arts, because is it liberal arts? Because liberal arts covers various areas. So I think they're going to have to try to pin it down that if you have a liberal arts with a focus, because I believe in most liberal arts, if you look at the transcripts, there's a focus area that's listed under liberal arts. So I think they'll have to kind of figure out like, okay, what is that focus? But a liberal studies is specific studies and like kind of, it's ranging math, science, social science, arts. It encompasses everything.
Next question is, does everyone need a certificate of clearance? If not, who needs them on file at CTC?
Definitely, if you're applying for a waiver, the CTC will require that you have a certificate of clearance, a valid certificate of clearance. Now, for the rest of the documents, the CTC does not require that you have a valid certificate of clearance. However, if you are requesting a temporary county certificate from your county so that the person can work prior to the paper application being granted, because remember, paper applications take up to 50 business days, which is about 3 months. So normally when you're applying for a PIP, a STIP, a waiver, you ask your county for the person to start working, based on a temporary county certificate. For us to be able to grant those, the person needs to either have a valid certificate of clearance or a valid document granted by the commission.
Hey, can you explain what the induction program consist in detail for someone new to this area?
Well, we're not induction sponsors here. What I tell people is if induction's going to be listed on their credential as a renewal requirement, it's going to say PRO. I tell them that they will be enrolled in induction by the district that hires them. And I explain that most districts have an induction program, and it's a series of workshops and support that they do while they're teaching. So that's really all I tell them. I don't know, do you guys have anything more extensive that you tell them?
We have induction out of the county office here, so we handle induction for all our smaller districts. All our like private school, Catholic schools do induction through us. So again, like it's a 1 or 2 year program. You can do a 1 year early completion option if you can show experience. You do create a portfolio during the 2 year period when you're in the 2 year program. It is there's some additional CPR stuff that you have to do that we can advise where to take it. And then again, we work with people for their additional requirements, because again, coming in from out of country, it's usually not just induction. There's a lot of other requirements. We'll refer back, we ask the districts to work with them, but a lot of times we do just let them know where they can meet those additional requirements.
I'm curious, Candy, as back in the day, districts were paying for induction. Do any districts still pay for induction?
Yes. Applicants
Perfect.
do not pay for induction at this point.
Oh, see, that's great. Thank you for that.
Next question is, do the new authorizations apply to the old MM credential?
The MM credential still has the same authorization. So you go back to those charts that I was sharing in our earlier presentation. The MM didn't change what they're authorized for. If they need to be authorized for something else, you would get a CLAP or have them do a bridge program. But you're not getting new mild, moderate STIPs and PIPs. But if someone has a mild, moderate, they're still authorized for what they've always been authorized for.
How do we support people interested in being special ed teachers that are being told they do not meet subject matter?
Refer them to that PSA 2110, subject matter competency by degree. That is a CTC document that says which degrees are subject matter competency. So, I mean, that's the guide that we use to tell people.
And just to add, it says 3 different agencies are saying different things. I'm not sure. It could be a lack of communication, because I'm pretty sure that we are pretty in line with what CTC, the information that CTC is saying. I know that we're pretty aligned with our local universities. CDE doesn't really have a say in subject matter and for credentialing purposes, and so I don't think we're in different pages. I think we're pretty clear.
Next question is, does the STIP require a board approval?
No.
Okay, is there a flow chart that we can refer to for waivers?
Not exactly a flow chart, but if you do pull up the waiver guidebook, there is a chart of requirements for the various types of waivers. I know that the guidebook's a little bit difficult, but there is a chart in there that's helpful.
Next question is, how long is the induction program? Once they complete induction and are recommended online for their clear, would the educator go through their employer to obtain their clear credential, or can they process online themselves?
The induction program will do an online recommendation. So once their portfolio is read and everything has been accepted, they've met all their additional requirements if they have any. The induction program will do the recommendation, and they will get an email to go online and pay. And it usually takes about 15 to 20 days. Especially in the summer. I mean, I usually do all mine kind of in the June timeframe. And usually if they go on and pay, they get it within 15-ish days.
Okay, have a teacher on a STIP, but wanting to have a teacher on a STIP, but wanting to place them on a PIP next year for PE. Can you explain what's needed? Briefly discussed this morning, will a waiver work?
I mean, if you meet the requirements for a PIP, sure, you can, and you have not met subject matter for PE, you can go back. Now, if you met subject matter for PE, then no. And a waiver will not work. A waiver will not work.
Next question is PIP for mild to mod support needs. Does sociology count under the requirements for the 18 units of social science needed on the single subject area?
And that's a yes, because sociology is subsumed under social science, so any of those units would count. Just like a degree in human development or child development would work for special ed, because those fall under home economics. If you look under what's subsumed under home economics, you'll see human development and child development. So degrees in those areas automatically qualify someone for a special ed PIP.
Which is a special ed worksheet. On the STEP application checklist, it states transcript evaluation. Just want to make sure I use the correct one for an RSP incoming teacher.
And again, our resource teacher is a special ed teacher, right? Same thing. But it's a CL 865 is the evaluation for SPED.
Okay, so we got a couple questions here that are brand new. We got about 5 more minutes. The subject matter for ed specialists is based on how they are enrolling in their programs. Universities are stating that those are not, that are going for single subject for education specialists are not meeting subject matter, even if they have a liberal arts or studies degree. So for an ed specialist, if they have a liberal studies degree, they do meet subject matter. So. Someone asked, what is the list called to view statutory subjects?
The link is in the presentation that you all received. It's called At a Glance. If you just type subject matter competency into the search bar of the CTC website, just type subject matter competency, you will find a link there that will take you right to, it's called At a Glance. And the CTC does indicate they will be updating that regularly.
Next question is, if the job posting asks for a valid single subject credential, can we accept a PIP or a STIP?
That's up to the local level. I mean, that's you as an employer are going to decide who to hire and what the requirements are for that.
If we had a teacher with a preliminary credential ELAM, but is in a dual language class, she has said she's scheduled to take the test, but did not pass. I had to apply for an emergency BA Spanish. She took the course. Is this a misassignment? What else do I need to do?
Okay, so if the person is teaching in a language, in a different language other than English, then you need the bilingual authorization. You say you apply for an emergency bilingual authorization, so I'm assuming the person is covered. And so that would not be considered a misassignment.
Next question is, does Bachelor of Arts in International Relations meet subject matter to be in a STIP?
No. Okay, I have a TK teacher that is a potential hire for next school year that has completed her credential RECA CBEST, but not her CSED. Is a STIP my best option?
You could do a STIP, you could do a PIP.
Yeah, I mean, she doesn't, I mean, the question is, how did she get that far without having subject matter, but that's neither here nor
Yeah,
there.
that's
But yeah, if
funky
she
now.
doesn't have subject matter, then you can PIP her.
Now think about TK, right? And the regulations that are supposed to come into play, CDE regulations, not CTC regulations, are supposed to come into play August 1, 2023, which may or may not happen. So take that into consideration.
Next question is, I have a teacher who is currently on an intern credential expiring on 9/20/2023. She's having a hard time passing the TPAs. What additional documentation do I need to submit in order to step down to a STIP?
Nothing.
If you're requesting the same subject, you just have to application CL 859 and make sure it's not valid at the same time that you're requesting that the internship is valid for.
And if they've never had one.
Yes. Mhm.
But I would also ask them to check with their university. Sometimes there's room for extension of those intern credentials. So if they haven't already used that, that might be an option.
Someone's asking, what is the course booklet she's mentioning? So she's talking, Stephanie mentioned the waivers manual. So you can find that on the credential information guide.
Yeah.
Yes, the manuals and handbooks. Mhm.
On a subsequent waiver, I have an educator that needs to take out-of-state exams to obtain his license comparable to teaching credential in California. He has taken and passed 2 out of the 3 exams? Can he obtain a third waiver? If not, what's next? My suggestion would be to email the waivers unit for additional information on that.
Do you have any suggestions on how to find coursework to meet renewal requirements for CLAP extensive support needs?
You'll need to go to a program for the coursework for extensive support needs when you're on a CLAP.
Yeah, it's not standalone courses. You have to be part of a program.
If an educator has held a STIP in music, can she get a STIP or a PIP or waiver in multiple subjects because it's a different credential type?
No.
Not a STIP, but maybe a PIP or a waiver.
Somebody wrote, I'm confused. Do I start with a PIP or a waiver as my first document? If the applicant does not have subject matter competency and is not intern ready, do I go with the PIP or waiver?
Well, PIP, because that's valid for a calendar year, right, guys?
Yes.
They don't have
Right.
subject matter competency.
I mean, as long as they have the 18 units, they would qualify for the PIP. So if it's an individual who doesn't have 18 units, then you could go waiver. But if they meet the base 18 units, you would go PIP.
In fact, the commission will deny a waiver if the person qualifies for a PIP.
Yes.
Right, it's like process of elimination. You look at the degree, if it's in a subject, then you go down to the STIP. If it's not subject matter equivalent degree, then you start counting units. And then if they don't have 18, but they have 12, you do waiver.
Okay, next question. I was under the impression that a mod severe did not cover resource. Am I wrong? Yes, you are wrong. It does cover an RSP position.
The education specialist credential, it does cover RSP. The older learning handicap or severely handicapped does not.
Next question is, I have an internship credential holder that meets a B-clad and has already met the target language. What document should he or she qualify for?
Be a waiver. If the program is not willing to add that onto their internship document, then you would do a waiver.
All right, we got through all the questions. Thanks for staying a couple of minutes over, ladies. So again, we would like to thank Candy, Niza, Stephanie Tomasi, Stephanie Magdaleno. We appreciate all of you and your knowledge. Our next session will be next Wednesday on child development permits and transitional kindergarten and UPK. So hope to see you then. The links will go out on Friday again. And thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.